That being said, we'll call this meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is the agenda approval. Are there any objections to the agenda as shown?
I think recent events have suggested that we might want to add 2 items. The first is a status report on our outstanding review request, and that has been affected by recent developments in the ordinance discussions, and so it's just come up as an issue recently. The other thing is that Hansel and I would like to make a brief report on our efforts to find and evaluate complaint management software that can be used by the board and by potentially even by internal affairs. I'm not sure where we would want to stick that in the.
I believe the software seems like it would. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we could put. We could put both of those items after the ordinance update and discussion because they both sort of have a bearing on that.
Okay.
So I move that we add those 2 items after item 6.
Okay. Is there? Go ahead.
Second.
Sure. Ms. Robinson, could you pull the board?
Yes. Okay. Member Brown?
Yes.
Member Frazier?
Yes.
Member Gilmore?
Yes.
Member Mendez?
Yes.
And Member Watson?
Yes.
Okay. So that passes. And then that would take us to the next item on the agenda, which would be the adoption of minutes. Are there any objections to the adoption of minutes?
Just a clarification, the minutes that are on there now are from the September meeting. Those are the ones that are overdue. And Hansel and I have sort of fumbled the handoff of the minutes taking for this month, but that one will be coming shortly. So we just have the one document for September.
Okay. Are there any objections to approval of the September minutes? Is there a motion? Did we already do the motion? Is there a motion to approve?
Move.
Second. Okay. Ms. Robinson, could you pull the board, please?
Sure. Member Brown?
Yes.
Member Frazier?
Yes.
Member Gilmore?
Yes.
Member Mendez?
Yes.
And Member Watson?
Yes.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the public comment. I see, I guess, is it Remy Trail?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Trail, excuse me, could you poll the audience for public comment?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. If you'd like to speak to the board at this time, please click the raise hand icon in your Zoom webinar. If you're joining us via telephone, you can press *9. Each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes to speak. I'm timing via my phone tonight, so when you hear a loud beeping, that means your time is up. And I see no hands raised at this time.
Okay, very well. That will take us to the next item on the agenda is the status of the complaints. And for that, we'll turn that over to Mr. Aguilar.
Yes, good evening. Thank you, Chair. Let me just pull up a report. Okay, so since your last meeting from October, we received the review board has received one closure letter, received two initial complaints, two review requests, and two of the complaints. The initial complaints were actually ineligible for two different reasons. So one of the review. So I'm just gonna inform you about the review request and then the ineligible complaints. So for the review request, one of the complainants indicated that he was subjected to unprofessional tone and demeanor from the officer, and he requested a review because the internal affairs failed to consider his video evidence as part of their investigation. The complainant was a white male. The subject officer was a male, and race is unavailable at this time. The additional individual that requested a review request, I'm still trying to gather more information, but actually right prior to this meeting, he informed me that he's currently working with one of the captains. So it seems like he might be getting follow-up from the police department at this time, and he may change his mind about a review request. So we'll be monitoring that. For the two initial complaints that were ineligible, one was a woman who indicated that she had a negative police encounter. Specifically, she was subjected to excessive use of force in an event that occurred on or about April 2019. So under your current ordinance, that would be time barred. It happened before the ordinance was approved, and even aside from that, it's at least 1 year after the date of the incident. For the other complaint that is outside of your jurisdiction, the complainant indicated that she was subjected to unprofessional tone and demeanor from a dispatcher. So the internal affairs actually doesn't investigate those matters, and they're actually sending it over to the emergency communication center for them to investigate that. And currently, under your current ordinance, that matter would not be within your scope as well, because you could only currently investigate incidents against police officers.
Mr. Aguilar, do we not have jurisdiction then over the 911 staff? Is that, just to clarify that? Maybe Mr. Mendez would know as well.
So that's a great question. I'm still trying to figure out that relationship because it's not a city owned particularly, or it's not a city department. So it's a regional. They do UVA 911s and the city and the county. So and we would need to look at that relationship a little closer to find out whether under the new ordinance there'd be any jurisdiction there.
So how was the complaint made? Was it at CP?
We received the complaint from internal affairs. They forwarded to us, and it said that they were going to communicate with the complainant to let them know that they're sending it over to the emergency communication center.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any additional questions or comments? Okay. Seeing as none. The next item on the agenda is ordinance update / discussion. Mr. Mendez, would you like to, I guess, spearhead that?
Thank you, Bellamy. Bear with me. I've got a few minutes worth of stuff to say here. By now, most of you know that we posted 2 documents on our website this morning, one of which is the current draft of the ordinance, the other of which is a summary of changes to the document that have happened since we previously submitted our our draft to the city council. Prior to that, it's been a while since we reported on what's going on, and some people are have been justifiably concerned that perhaps nothing has been happening, and so we wanted to release these drafts at this point to reassure people that we've been making some progress, and to also elicit additional public reaction and comment. What has been happening in the last about 7 weeks is that first Dr. Fraser and I had two meetings with Councillor Snook and Payne, and one was attended by Ashley Marshall, the Deputy City Manager for Racial Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. And Max Robinson provided administrative support. And the objective of those meetings was to discuss the city councilors' questions and concerns related to the ordinance. Subsequently, we've gone back and forth exchanging drafts and comments, and worked to resolve the differences and to try and clarify things that have either of us confused. We had hoped that we would have had a complete consensus draft in time to post with our agenda, so we could formally discuss it at this meeting. But it became clear the last weekend that that wasn't going to happen in time. So we agreed to post a copy of the latest version of our product to inform the public what's been going on. One thing that we should understand is that the ordinance that we've posted on the website now is a work in progress. We've made substantial movement toward agreement and completion. There are a number of legal and practical issues that we still need to work on. I'll discuss those a little bit later. If the current draft is a little bit rough, so I suggest that people who want to review the documents start with the summary of changes document, because it goes through section by section and very briefly says what does this section allow us to do, and what is the change from the last time we talked about it. While we've been consulting our attorney for advice, this version of the document has not been subject to formal legal review by either her nor the city attorney. And until now, it has not been shared with the full board of the city council or the stakeholders. The operating procedures have been drafted and they remain to be finalized, and we'll be able to do that shortly. Throughout, the goal has been to obtain complete drafts in time for consideration by the city council at the December 6th meeting. Posting the version that we posted is intended to give the public another opportunity to comment. It is certain that this is not a final version. Some parts of it will be amended. The city council will have the last word on what is included in the ordinance. And ongoing work by the board is now just advisory. We've already submitted our first shot at it. I'd like very much to acknowledge the hard work of Jeff Fraser and Councillor Snook and Payne in this process. So there are some outstanding issues which I will be perfectly willing to answer questions about. Throughout this negotiations, our position, I think, and it represents the position of the full board, has been that we favor a hybrid oversight model that allows the CRB to receive complaints, to monitor and review investigations, to investigate incidents and complaints, and make non-binding disciplinary recommendations in the case of serious misconduct. So we've been working on a lot of nitty-gritty issues like, when can the board investigate an incident or a complaint, and what are the procedures for doing so? when can the board review a CPD investigation and what are the procedures? Another important issue is, which frankly I admit we hadn't dealt with very well in the past, was how can we best protect the privacy of complainants and witnesses? We also asked the question, what power does the board have to monitor and oversee investigations by the CPD? Under what circumstances can the board make disciplinary recommendations? What are the procedures for issuing a subpoena? And finally, we put together a draft code of ethics and a very preliminary specification of grounds for removing a board member, which we don't have any now. So I think we've been able to retain a relatively strong model with a few remaining controversies. I'm particularly pleased with the extent to which we've been able to reach agreement, I believe, regarding the ability of the executive director to have access to internal affairs files and to oversee internal affairs investigations and to report to the board without sharing confidential information. A couple of areas where we're still, there may still be some disagreement. First, I think it's safe to say there's been reluctance to give the board very much discretion in when we get to investigate a complaint or an incident. And there has been some discomfort with allowing the board to engage an independent investigator at all, something that we have worked very hard to retain. You know, part of this arises from practical difficulties and costs of having an independent investigator. There's another important issue, which is a legal controversy, which I believe that I'm not sure if Lisa Robertson is here tonight, but if she is, she can comment on it, and I'll just mention it briefly. There's a major problem with our authority to make disciplinary recommendations. One interpretation of current VA law is that it does not allow boards to meet in closed session to hear confidential information. This theory was in fact embodied in the Oversight Ordinance that was recently passed by Arlington, Virginia. If this interpretation is adopted, it would severely affect the ability of the board to make disciplinary recommendations. The current language in the ordinance requires that the city attorney certify the Virginia General Assembly authorizes police civilian review boards to receive information in confidence without thereby making these files public records. And so far, and this is only been raised in a highly preliminary fashion, the city attorney has indicated that she is at this point not willing to make such a certification under current law. So this, remains to be worked out. As you will see, however, she has very graciously agreed to work with us on our pending review hearing and to find ways that would allow us to proceed on that, which I think is a good thing. So next steps. First, we're ready to answer questions tonight if you have any. I realize that you don't have, no one has had a lot of time to review the documents. In addition, Dr. Fraser and I will continue working with the council, on the debate regarding the ordinance and the operating procedures. We obviously welcome comments, public comments, and in fact, the further motion on the ordinance is now the business of the council. So it's send your comments to both, both us and the council. And we hope, and this is a hope that has been shared by members of the city council, and I hope we can make it come real to reality, is that they have the first reading of the ordinance at their December 6th meeting, with second reading and passage by the end of this year, which I think would be a wonderful thing if we could accomplish that. Does the board have any questions?
I just had a
Go ahead, Dr. Frazier.
I just had a couple comments in response to the vice chair's presentation. One, just a huge shout out to Councilor Snook and Payne, who have come to the table open-minded and really in good faith tried to hammer out these contentious issues. Cannot say enough about the time and energy and brilliance that Mr. Mendez has brought to this effort. And then just a reminder to all of us on the board that, you know, we're going to, this is a negotiated document for which council has the final say, and you know, we're not going to get everything we wanted. We're not going to get everything that the legislature provides for potentially. It's going to be a compromise document, but I think we're getting, and I think Mr. Mendez would agree, most of what we want, or at least part of everything that we want. So I'm very pleased with it. I'm very pleased with the work that's gone on and putting this together, and you know, it's on to City Council. So thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Mendez, thank you.
Mr. Mendez, you know, that brought this up earlier, just under section 457A, the contradiction that it poses to the actual powers and duties under that section, under 257A. It says that the board and the police department shall jointly develop the process for receiving and investigating. However, under section 452C, it leaves those powers to the board itself, and it's just a determination of which one of those is actually going to rule the day. That's my only primary concern out of all of it.
Yeah, and actually, that's a good question, and we actually discussed with Councilor Snook Payne as to what jointly means. And in, I guess, the next section, the next item on our agenda, Hansel is going to talk about what a joint system would look like for receiving complaints and managing evidence associated with complaints. I assure you there is no intent to reduce the power of the board to investigate when they want to.
Well, and I don't know if Ms. Hudson can comment or not, but it's, you know, if we having both items, both tracks within the ordinance itself, one has to give way to the other. And I mean, if you're looking at black and white and, you know, how the law is operating, it's either one or it can't necessarily be both, unless I'm incorrect, Ms. Hudson.
Well, there is some play there, Chairman Brown. One of the legal issues that is at play in that assessment is a in your code at section 9.1-600 that requires every law enforcement agency to have a process by which it receives and processes complaints. So the question is whether or not a hybrid approach, some joint responsibility between the police department and the board satisfies that requirement that presently the police department has to meet. So that's what we're trying to work out, or that's at least what I understand, that that board member or Vice Chair Mendez and Counselor Snook have been going back and forth about, and some reconciliation of that question, I think will speak to the issue that you raise. And I certainly don't think it can be all board all the time under those circumstances, as long as that law remains effective.
Sure. I think I think from a community perspective, I mean, one of the issues is that, I don't know, maybe a joint situation would satisfy, but there's already this watchful eye of, the police department. And so that's kind of, I don't know, that's just something that just jumps out. And then I guess the follow-up question would be, well, if there is the 2457A that's ruling the day, is it redundant to have the 2452C? And Mr. Mendez, I see your hand, so you can go ahead.
Yeah, and again, I think one of the concepts here, as Hansel will talk about, is that one of the particular data management systems that we're talking about, the way it would work, and the way many other data management systems work, where there is an internal affairs department and a oversight board, is that there's a Chinese wall built between the two organizations. In the case of the software that we're looking at now, there would be two different licenses, and we'd have two different sets of access to the information. One of the concerns that Councilor Snook raised in particular, and also actually Marshall raised in particular, was to preserve the privacy of individuals who didn't want the board in their business. And so one of the approaches that we've adopted in 457, I'm not sure exactly which section it is that if someone specifies that they don't want the board to investigate a complaint, they can do that. And then they can, and at that point, we would get a redacted version of only a redacted version of the complaint that had all personal information removed. That way we can, we will know that the complaint happened. We will know what the allegations were, but we won't be in anybody's business. And I'm hoping also that this will get around, 91600 as well. I hope we can find a way to do that.
Okay. I don't have any additional questions. Is there, Dr. Frazier, did you? Okay. Mr. Watson? Okay. Ms. Gilmore, did you have any questions?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I just urge folks to, take the time to at least, read through that changes document, the summary of changes, the draft version of the ordinance, and we've already gotten a comment from someone who said, hey, this is really technical and complicated. And so one of the things that needs to be done, we recognize, is to simplify the language and make it much easier to follow. The summary document is a lot easier to deal with.
Okay. So seeing as that section has been taken care of, I guess the next would be the hybrid of the status report on the review request and the complaint management software. Now, would that be Mr. Aguilar, or is that still with you, Mr. Mendez?
I think Hansel is prepared to talk about our software adventures.
Yeah, so one of the systems that we're looking at that we find really promising, it's called Civil, SIVIL. And there's a lot of different softwares, as Mr. Chairman Mendez has mentioned, but there aren't too many really just focus on civilian oversight world. There, a lot of the software that we have for case management investigations, they really tailor for internal affairs. IA Pro being one of the big names in the industry. But among others, there are others that are kind of intended for more generalized use. The reason why we've been looking at civil closely is because it is intended with the purpose. They're a new startup, but they're intended with the purpose to provide civilian oversight agencies the ability to process their complaints. And we have, they gave us access to a demo that I'm just going to show. We can schedule, put on the agenda a more detailed demo, but this is just kind of bare bones so you could get a feel of what that may look like under the system. So let me go ahead and share the screen. Do I have the ability to share the screen, Remy, or?
Give me just 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, you should be able to see it now.
Thank you. So let's see which one.
There we
Okay. Oh, now I can't see it.
go. Well, we got the Gotham screen up.
Okay. So you see, okay, now I see. We have over here the under the new ordinance, you'll also be having the ability to receive compliments or kudos from the police department or officers. So that's also a function. This is again just a demo. Over here where it says Gotham, welcome to Gotham, it would say the police civilian oversight board. We would tailor it, customize it to the board's use. So you would potentially have the ability to submit a complaint or a complaint, excuse me, a compliment or a complaint form. And then it also within this page that's public facing, you'll also be able to see data and statistics real time on complaints. So we would kind of move away from the complaint tracker that we have posted now, and then you'll be able to see complaints. You can look at them by allegations. You could post them for a particular period in time, the years, and see how trends are looking. Complaints by discipline, race, ethnicity. And again, all of this is customizable. There's something that we can work closely with the administrators of the software to make sure it meets our needs. But we could also include the frequently asked questions. And over here, we would really want to tailor it for the complaint process, not really information about the complaint board, oversight board, because we want to just make sure that this is going to be an external link to the current website that we have. So this would be just information tailored more about the complaint process itself. An individual would be able to make a complaint in the complaint form. It's something again that'll be customizable to meet the needs of the oversight board. The option to file anonymously would be provided there. Name, email, all the data that we need. Let's see if we can. Let's say yes. And then the complaint form, the description of the event or the incident. You'll be able to include any external links. If a complainant has a video on YouTube, we'll also be able to upload documents here. Provide you more information about the incident, the location, the date, time, the name of the officer if they know that information, any witnesses. And again, you can add officers, you can add witnesses.
I guess you got to fill in the form. It's tough to get.
Yeah. Let's see if we can move. Okay. So then also we're tracking, be able to track how we're hearing about these complaints or how individuals are hearing complaints are hearing about the board, which is going to be important for data purposes. And again, all this information, it's not set in stone, it's customizable. So this is just the kind of form that they have currently there.
It's kind of a Cadillac. Ours could be much simpler.
Yes.
And if I may just interject
Sure.
real quick here, the intent here, obviously filing a complaint online, requires access to a computer and comfort with, filling out forms and things. The idea is that complaints can still be filed verbally, in which case the individual in the internal affairs or the CRB would then go through the form and fill it out for the individual. So it wouldn't require somebody to have access to a computer and to be, very facile with computer use.
Yes. And another feature, they built in Google Translate here. So if we have complainants that speak a different language, not English, they'll be able to use that and be able to look at the complaint form in their language or native language. And then we can flip it back so we don't, it'll translate it back to us. So we'll be able to read it back in English. I want to give you the view of the dashboard of what it would look like once we were managing the complaints or the cases, and what that would look like. We would have the information here about the compliment or complaint, who's assigned to it, the allegations. These are different ways to review the information, the data that's in the software or the data we're inputting. And then one of the features that we discussed, if we have a system where we can both, where we will both receive complaints and we have to make that triage, who's gonna investigate it, whether IA or whether the board, we could potentially transfer cases if they utilize the system as well. We can receive the complaint and say, hey, we're transferring this case to you. Once we transfer it, we won't be able to see anything that they do on their end because that's their investigation. And then we'll be able to put any notes within that case, any movement or any final notes that we want to include there for data purposes.
Mr. Aguilar, two questions. One, I assume this is just airtight in terms of the security of the system and, in terms of the, state-of-the-art security.
Yes, and that's a great question. They do have a very rigorous process, and so does the city. So if we wanted to, if you decided to make the decision to move with any system, it would have to go through its review process to IT. Okay. In one of our meetings, we did have one of our IT representatives at the meeting, so he got kind of an initial screening of it. But if you wanted to move forward, then it would still go through a very rigorous process. They fill out a lot of forms outside of my purview, but it's something that they'll be able to do. And it also has a legal review process to make sure we're good there and any FOIA considerations that may come of this.
Okay, I was going to ask you about FOIA, but also would we as board members have access to the site to check in on cases or see the status or whatever, or would that just all have to go through you?
So and that'll be the logistics that we have to figure out. Okay. If it's an investigation, just for the integrity of the investigation, it may be best that you as a board, any board member doesn't review a live investigation, wait till it's completed and then provide access to review the complete investigation if you have to go to a hearing or so forth. But there is abilities to provide access to board members.
Yeah, there's one other feature that I'd like to call attention to of this particular software is there's a public facing side whereby an individual can track their complaint. And they can log on and what is the deadline for completing it? Where are they in the investigation? And again, that's customizable too.
Yes, I'm sorry about that. Forgot that right here.
No, that's all right. So that's another issue. As long as we populate it with real information, another way to improve transparency and responsiveness.
Right. It'll generate a tracking number, and then the individual could go and check in on, and it'll have, we could customize the status bar to let them know at what stage of the investigation it is.
And I think it's worth noting, we may have talked about this at an earlier meeting, I can't recall when, but in some ways, having this in place addresses a lot of the other concerns within the proposed ordinance. I mean, in terms of tightening the ship, and would you elaborate on that, or could you, Mr. Aguilar?
Just want to make sure I answer your question. In tightening the ship, in what form do you mean?
Well, just in terms of, you know, how information is handled, how it comes into the system, how it's dispersed. I mean, a lot of things that were sort of loosey-goosey in the original ordinance, and would have taken more time to try to work out with council, can be subsumed under the implementation of a software such as Civil.
Correct, yes. And because for one, it will have the intake component of it, making sure that we house in all the complaints in one place, it's centralized. Currently, there's the police department has a PDF online and they receive it, but they could also come through us. So this will kind of centralize everything in that regard for intakes, but also the review component, which you hadn't had the opportunity to review a case yet, but then we could potentially do the review virtually, and you have access to this software. So it would address a lot of the concerns that we have right now.
Yeah, and I think, again, I can just add a little bit, sorry, James.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I guess we'd have to look at
if we, this is sort of a, you know, just a 21st century way of bookkeeping, among other things. It's keeping track of the various kinds of evidence, the statements and complaint forms and video files and all that in one place. It takes the place, you know, it's on the cloud. It takes the place of a filing cabinet where something could get lost. It's going to be backed up, and it's basically bringing a level of professionalism to the system. Sorry, James.
Oh, no, that's all right. Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense, right? It's in tune with everything else we use nowadays. I guess the key would be to have the legal people and the computer people and our executive director kind of sit down and go through the what if drills, you know, to make sure the business rules or the ordinance is in tune with it. I was just thinking about if somebody did say, hey, I've got a complaint, but I want to talk to you about it, as opposed to filing anything anywhere. Could we, I guess we could submit one on behalf of somebody, but you know, there could be some people that are just like, I don't want, those are my kids. I don't want to, you know, talk to the police. I don't want to write anything, but I want to let somebody know about what happened. And so just wondering if we'd funnel those to there. All right, my sons are taking over, so I'm gonna hit mute.
Well, part of that can be handled to some extent by filing anonymously, I guess. But you know, in other cases, it's just a matter of at what point do we have enough information to do anything. Some, you know, unfortunately, there's conflict there. We need to have some kind of record to act upon if we're going to, you know, be a board.
But I think also to James's point is the earlier point having to do with if someone doesn't have access to a computer or is not computer savvy, they could always get with Mr. Aguilar and he could work with them to get information in the system, read it back, make sure it's accurate in terms of how they want it, you know, the input to go. Is that not the case? Would that not be an option, Mr. Aguilar?
Yeah, it's absolutely, and this is no way trying to exclude anybody from filing a complaint. It's trying to provide more access. So if somebody doesn't want to go through this route, they can always call me. They can always come to the office. So those mechanisms will still be available. And I think it also for data purposes, it is important to track inquiries, so to speak, where an individual isn't quite sure they had a negative experience or they had an experience, they just want to tell somebody about it. At least tracking that for your data purposes, it'll be useful for your annual reports.
Is there a proposed price point?
Well, first off, you got to understand that we're looking at more than one package. Civil is a kind of a unique beast. It's a very new company. We could, as the Civilian Review Board, we would actually be beta users. Beta users don't pay anything for a while. On the other hand, if we're beta users, we don't really have a contract that requires them to provide us with any services. So, you know, we're risking, you know, a screw up, and they're risking not making any money. But nonetheless, you know, we think their product is pretty good based on demonstrations that we've seen. After the first, whatever, break-in period, they were talking about 6,000 to 8,000 a year, depending on the users. Was that Hansel? Do you recall?
I don't remember that particular statistic.
Yeah, but it was in that range.
So,
yeah.
I mean, I'm familiar with beta using. You said this is a new company. Like, how relatively new?
I believe.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I believe they went live this summer, but I know that we spoke to the our counterparts or colleagues in Long Beach, who they've actually signed on. Their commission signed on to use the software. They're moving from IA Pro to use this, and they in their reference for the company. And we, Vice Chairman Mendez and I had a discussion with the gentleman there, and they've been working with the company for a year. And they've just been working on customizing it more for the needs of an oversight. But to your question, I believe they went live sometime this summer.
So yeah, go ahead.
So they've been working on it for a year. This just started roughly about 5 months ago. Are there any other track records on this particular performance that can be, you know, looked at, you know, as opposed to, you know, us just necessarily being, you know, the guinea pigs along with Long Beach, so to speak, because obviously we are again talking about, you know, various issues to include the privacy, you know, matters as well.
Yeah, and absolutely, we all recognize the risk of committing to this company, and we haven't. And we've also looked at a Canadian company, which is much better established, is not nearly as pricey or ornate as IA Pro, but we just haven't gone as far with them as we have with Civil. A lot of the screens on their product look a lot like the screens on Civil. You know, the difference, as Hansel points out, is that the Civil software, the oversight software, is meant to be used by oversight organizations, whereas most other software in this space is more general purpose, and it's intended for internal affairs or internal investigative management in general, or for much larger organizations.
Is there an existing relationship with NACOL? Do they have any, you know, information or, you know, yay or nay on this?
I'm not sure that they endorse products, but I know the founder, Mr. Tony Rice, he has an active relationship with NACOL. He's gone to the conferences. He's going next month as well to the conference. So he does have an existing relation. I mean, it'll be a good place for him to be shopping around for agencies. So he has established that connection.
Okay. Have we had a conversation with Cami or anybody else that we've presently or previously interacted with?
Go ahead. I was just gonna say, not regarding this software, no.
Okay. Mr. Watson.
Oh yeah, one of the things I was thinking when we go with whatever company we end up going with, I guess the key would be trying to synchronize it. It sounds like the CPD is interested in going that way too, based on what was said in a prior meeting. because it could get a little funky if they're still operating on a PDF, and then we're working with something 2022 style, and keeping everything. I mean, this sounds like the way to go, right? Like we live in the cell phone era. We're on computers all day. Makes sense. But yeah, I think they would have to. Seems like they would. It could get weird if we're doing modern day and they're still in Flintstone era, and we're trying to. Because I've done a lot of database stuff. You try to bring it back together. So that's something to keep in mind.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's absolutely something to keep in mind. And also the fact that it's a beta is also something to keep in mind as well. And I'm not, I don't know if in your DoD space, if you've, come across that, but that's, I mean, that is of, of concern to me. So, Mr. Mendez.
Yeah. No, shoot. Now I think I've forgotten what I was going to say. Oh yeah. When the civil people staged a demo for us, Lieutenant Gore and Chief Durrett were there, and they were favorably impressed. And again, this is just after an hour and a half demonstration, because they are, it seems, also looking for something on these lines that's not immensely expensive and immensely complex. The thought that I have, and I've got to stress that we're in the very early stages of this, is that if we were to have a good experience with the civil software as the CRB, that it would be a much easier sell to the CPD to adopt a similar system and make things much more seamless.
I mean, that's okay. So that's a thought. But then, we come back to the ordinance under section 2-457A, where there is this deal where we're jointly developing a process for receiving and investigating complaints. So if we're going to jump out there first and the CPD is going to fall behind, where does that joint operation come into play?
I think there are various levels of coordination. I mean, we could operate a joint system and use entirely different software as long as we coordinated. I mean, the joint is, it's talking MOU and we're talking joint. And so there's a whole lot of wiggle room for us to do what is, what we think to be the best.
Okay.
Clearly, there'd have to be an MOU going forward with CPD about those very questions, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Watson.
Check if Ms. Gilmore may had something she wanted to say, or
No.
okay, thank you.
Are there any additional questions or comments?
I just wondered how the process moves forward, Mr. Chair. I mean, Mr. Aguilar, are you going to continue to pursue options and continue to report back to us about other choices, or just, where are we with the process is what I'm asking.
Sure. I've been working with the Vice Chair, Mendez, so whatever you'd think is appropriate in terms of, I have no problem seeking more options for the board. And, we just, I think the thought process was to try to get something as soon as possible. We don't want to be in a situation where we have this ordinance and then we're falling behind.
Right.
That's one of the things that could be really detrimental to any oversight board, having a backlog. So just want to make sure that we're mindful of the time we're spending on this. But absolutely, whatever the board needs, we can continue to explore. So that's not an issue for me.
It seems to me that it might be useful to arrange a time for the board to come together and get a demo from 2 or 3 companies. Maybe do that in one swoop, because I know everybody's busy. But so we could sort of see a demo of this civil and then some of the others. I don't know if Bill Mr. Mendez has a thought about that, but it seems to me, we need to be, somewhat apprised of what's what the options are.
Yeah, I just, I hardly agree with that, suggestion. I think we've been working very hard on the ordinance in the last
Yes.
month, and so we haven't got as far on this particular direction as we might have otherwise. And of course, now the holidays are upon us. So I suggest that, Hansel and I can probably report on one or two other, at least one other software package in our next meeting.
Great.
But I don't think we'll be in a position to, arrange a big demo, probably before the new year.
New year. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Watson.
Couple thoughts. So, maybe we should, I know we had talked about this at one point, but maybe kick out if we can, where we are on our budget, like how much money we have left. One of the things I can, I haven't been working as much lately. I've been so busy with my job and everything. But, one of the things I was thinking about, well, one, we want to see how much money we have, right, to spend. It makes total sense, to get into the current day, no doubt about that. But so we want to see how much money we have left. There's a lot of year left, right, because we're in a government fiscal year. But the other thing is we may want to do some more training, and I can look into that, and link up with NACO and see what if they can customize some additional training for FY or for 22, I guess 2022, maybe starting around late January, late February, or something like that, so we can be abreast of all the new any of the new changes now that more states are coming online, and they're probably working with a lot more cities than they ever have at the moment. So, but again, I think it'd be good to maybe if we can get a monthly or every couple months a report, hey, how much money do we have left? That would be good to have. So then we can spend those funds wisely.
Okay, Mr. Mendez.
Yeah, I certainly agree. And again, that's sort of another oversight that's slipped through the cracks this month. With regard to training, as you know, the NACOL annual meeting is coming up in December. And they have a virtual, it's a dual track. They have a virtual and an on-site. And James, if you wanted to maybe check that out and see, if it was worthwhile for, recommending some of those sessions for the members of the board, that would be great.
Okay, and did that section cover, Ms. Aguilar? Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on that. I do have access. I just got access to all the virtual ones, so I can give you a list of. I haven't seen them. I mean, they're an hour each, and it's about 36 sessions, so it's 36 hours. So I can give you a list of what's there. I don't know what's there yet. I'm not even. If we can download it too, and then put it on Teams for everybody, and then hopefully we can go that route too. Everybody has access to it. But I do agree. Mr. Watson, with your point about the budget. And I also think that you need to consider, and I've been running some different scenarios, that the current budget may or may not coincide with the new ordinance. So there's a lot of additional fees that you have to consider: the hearing officers, the investigators, the mediation. And I've been putting together some of the different routes and scenarios that may look like in terms of budget. And it's hard also to predict because we don't have solid data in terms of complaints that the civilian review received. So I've done it on an average of the past 2 years that the internal affairs has received, which in the last 2 years is an average of 44. So I've been doing some scenarios, and once I have that more complete, I can share it with the board just to give you and kind of idea. And it's also hard to predict the trend. So mediation is one of the components of the new proposed ordinance. And there could be a scenario where all complaints are sent to mediation. So you wouldn't have any investigations, any hearing officers, and any legal fees necessarily for those particular, but that's not realistic. You're not going to get a year where you're sending all cases to mediation. Likely you're not going to get a year where all cases are being investigated. You're going to get some are being sent to investigation, some to mediation, and that those are different prices for or different scenarios, budget and scenarios for that.
And so is there a question?
I was just thinking that, last year we were pretty new, right? We're pretty green. And there was a lot of pieces we didn't have. We didn't have an executive director, didn't have the legal help. We probably need to get our eyes on the prize for getting set up to maybe put together some type of budget, right, proposal for when they start doing the, I don't know, I'm gonna say FY 22 or 23, whatever the next, I think it's in June, it starts up again, or early July. So that we, as Hansel was saying, we have some new features. Then we talked about expert witnesses one time on a meeting. I don't know how often we'd have to call on somebody like that, right? Probably wouldn't be that frequently, but we don't want to be in a position where we say, oh, we can't, we're sorry, we were gonna do it, but what had happened was, we want to be in the best, we want to fight for the dollar, right? To be a professional board. So guess we got to figure out what we need to do to make that happen. And I'm glad we got Hansel to help us out with some of that.
If I remember correctly, the city council was in budget hell last year from like February through April. So we probably need to get on the stick there.
And did that section cover the status report on the review request?
I just had a real brief announcement in addition, if I may.
Sure.
Yeah, we have this long outstanding review request. We got the hearing procedures approved by the city council. The intent was that we would move forward with a hearing as soon as practicable. Hansel had a very useful suggestion that we might want to have a mock session first, so we could work through the procedures and who's going to talk first and who's going to preside and things like that. But then within the last few weeks, this issue came up of whether the board could even proceed to a review hearing, given the what appeared to be the prevailing interpretation of the Virginia FOIA law that in effect forbids us from receiving confidential information and meeting to discuss it. And so in that case, and so for that reason, we have not worked aggressively to schedule a new, this long-awaited event. It turns out that I've just received an email from Lisa Robertson just today, and it's not her fault that the timing is my fault, who suggests that there might be a way to find a workaround for us to indeed proceed with a review request hearing. I'm not clear how that would work if we really can't get access to, for example, the personnel files and the evidence that the police used. But she expressed a hope that could happen, and I'm very happy that she did that. And as I understand it, executive director has had preliminary talks with the police about how what the procedures would be for them to make the internal affairs reports available to us. But we're behind on that. We're yet more behind on that. I'm sorry. Hopefully we can move forward.
Okay. Are there any additional comments or questions there? Mr. Aguilar?
Yeah, I just want to make sure, just for my end, and make sure I provide the support. Is that something that you feel that you would be interested in this mock session, and how realistic would it be to do it by next, this mock review, to do it by your next meeting? Or would you want to wait till January? And just to explain what that thought process, we did it in Fairfax when we got our feet wet before we had our first meeting, review request meeting. So we've coordinated with the internal affairs. They provided us a case that was from years ago. They allowed us to review that case, and then when we went to the meeting, we had the opportunity to talk. One of the police officers was role playing, asked the complainant, and then there was a representative from the police department that played that role to provide information to the panel. And then we just went through all the motions, and we went everything short of writing up the report. But that gave us the confidence to be able to do it for future cases. But I didn't know realistically with the holidays and everything, if that's something that you were interested for December, if you're interested at all, or to do it after in January.
Mr. Mendez?
Yeah, I don't want to put the pressure on Cynthia, but, and I'm not even sure she's seen the email yet, but the suggestion that Lisa made was that she and Cynthia get their heads together and work on a way for us to actually hold a meeting. So I think a lot of the timing issues are going to depend on that. Ms. Hudson, you got something to say?
Only that I did see Lisa's email. She and I have talked about this issue at some length this week. And I as she mentioned in the email, I think we can fashion a path forward to get where you need to get on a hearing that doesn't run afoul of the Freedom of Information Act concerns that Lisa has. But in terms of how long that takes, it really just kind of depends on Lisa and I getting together and comparing schedules and seeing whether or not we can work on the timeline that you desire. So if you want to set a date that you'd like us to work toward, I feel confident that she and I can make every effort to work that out.
I think from a practical perspective, next year is going to be the offering date. Obviously, roughly next week is going to be Thanksgiving. And then we have the December holiday. Realistically, it's just given the parameters of the city attorney's concerns and everything, it's just not going to happen prior to the end of the year. And it would be unfair for us, looking realistically, to put that on both our council and the city attorney.
Perhaps we could request that Ms. Hudson report to us at our next meeting.
Certainly. Happy to do that.
Okay.
Lisa and I will confer between
The
now and
idea
then.
is that hopefully you can have a fairly detailed, how does this square with her interpretation of the new ordinance? Or how are we actually going to be allowed to see this information if we can't discuss it? Never mind.
Well,
You're the legal expert.
We'll see what we can do to run it to ground, and I will at least be in a position to give you a status report on those discussions by your next meeting.
Thanks a lot.
Very well. Are there any additional comments or questions? Seeing as there are none, Mr. Watson.
Might be a little bit unrelated, but how many vacant positions do we have on the board right now?
Currently have two. One is a non-voting police officer role or police or law enforcement role, and then there is a vacant community member role.
I really think, and I'm kind of talking to you, Mr. Payne down there. I really think that we need to fill that voting member spot. I think we need to diversify the board a little bit. It's very, very male heavy at the moment. So, ideally we could get a lady. Ideally we can get a minority. Ideally we can get somebody who, who worries about their kids, right? Going out into this community. Um,
I-
I think, but yeah, so
No, go ahead.
yeah, so I think that, city council, maybe the new council, I guess at this point, holidays are here and all that, but that's something that we can't forget about, that I don't know how many months that position has been vacant, but probably for a while. I kind of forgot there was 2 vacant positions, actually. It's been vacant so long. So I think that would be good to get that filled.
I mean, I understand the sentiment with regard to the balance of the board itself, but I think you and Ms. Hudson can correct if I'm wrong. You'd run into sexual discriminatory issues if you're saying, and I don't even think it's outlined in the prior ordinance itself. If you're saying you have to be a specific gender.
Oh yeah. Like obviously I know that, but to add another guy to this board, I've been married 20 years, man. I mean, that ain't gonna help. But yes, I would not eliminate any qualified human being, but
And I think the other, and this is the issue, or something that I've spoken to other counselors about, is that you have to have the supply available as well. And if you don't have enough, folk that are interested in doing the job or fulfilling the role, that's kind of the bigger issue at play, from my understanding.
Yeah, I think you and I, James, have actually discussed the need for us to recruit, because that's, it really is up to us. It's not up to the council to go out and find people who are going to apply. So I would encourage everybody here, everybody in this room, to think about people who would make good board members and talk to them and ask them to come to church on Sunday and apply.
Cena brought up, the possibility of including some people who applied previously, who are city employees, and there was a lady who was a bus driver, and I don't see that as a major conflict with this board, who was a quality candidate, lives in the community, has kids in the community, but couldn't be on the board, right? And I mean, our city has been in such disarray for at least 4 years, if not longer, that I could see why people don't want to sign up, right? But I don't know.
I mean, again, those are obviously legitimate concerns. The order of the day is the actual ordinance, and those are those same factors that were in the 2019 ordinance seem to be, transitioned over into the ordinance that we're presenting now. So if we want to make those modifications, that has to be done in this particular ordinance to be able to do so that city council can make room for that. Because as it stands, city employee can't be on the board.
Yeah, and that's why I'm just bringing that up, right? Because there's some good people. I mean, you could be a teacher at CHS, right?
Yeah.
You're in the community more than we all are, and it's like, what does that have to do with?
Yeah, that is.
So I'm just talking, just bringing a discussion up.
That is now in the new ordinance draft. Is
that is in there?
That is in there. That the city employee who does not have a conflict of interest can be up.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say as well, James. That we when we met with council, we specifically raised that and asked for that modification for the very reasons that you stated. So thank you. Yeah.
You were saying it might have been old, Mr. Brown. That might have been old. All good though. But yeah, I mean, we just can't forget that we have some, we can bring some additional strength to this board. So
definitely,
that's it. Thank you.
Are there any additional questions or comments? Seeing as none, Mr. Trail, could you poll the audience for public comment, the final public comment?
Absolutely. If you'd like to speak to the board at this time, please click the raise hand icon in your Zoom webinar or press *9 if you're joining us via telephone. I will be timing you and you'll hear a loud beeping when your time is up. Harold Foley, you are on with the board. Can you hear us?
Can y'all hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can hear you.
Hey, so little history about why this board was created. It was disproportionate contact of minorities in the Salisbury area, right? So I look at what's going on now and people talking about compromise, right? People who don't have lived experience talk about compromise. We don't want to compromise on anything. You know, a lot of people who's on this board believe that they have the lived experience. But let me tell you, you don't. And the optics of all white men deciding on what a PCRB looks like, that's the compromise. And Black folks are tired of that type of compromise, right? So with that said, that's all I got to say is the optics of all white men figuring out what to do about police brutality that affects mostly Black and brown folks is an oxymoron. Thank you. Y'all have a great day.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Foley. Katrina Turner, you are on with the board. Can you hear us?
Yes. And can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello?
Hello, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Well, I wanted to say that there has been some Black women who has applied to this board. One of the Black women is Rosia Parker. She's one of the initial board members, but every time she applies to this board, she has been turned down. And that's someone who lives in the community, lived police brutality, lived through a lot, okay? But she's being denied while out there on the street promoting the CRB. Other people have told me that the city has denied them a position on the CRB. So people are trying to apply to your board, but they're being turned down. And another thing I need to mention is the lawsuit. Why has nobody mentioned this lawsuit? Something that Chairman Brown started, something that he bragged about on Facebook about starting. Why have you all not mentioned one word about the lawsuit and him being mentioned and two other board members being mentioned in this lawsuit? Because that's a problem. And to now know that you all have been mentioned in a lawsuit, and we already said how Bellamy, Chairman Brown, has really destroyed this PCRB. Now with this, y'all just don't know how you all look right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. If there's anyone else who would like to speak at this time, please click raise hand or press *9 if you're joining us via telephone. Okay, Mr. Chair, there are no more hands raised.
You're muted, Mr. Chair.
We have one more. Gloria Beard, you are on with the board. Can you hear us?
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Well, my question, I don't know. It's just so confusing. So, so everything is up and running. I mean, y'all got it all together to start doing cases, complaints, right? Are y'all ready? I mean, have y'all had any complaints and that y'all working on or now? I mean, can you hear me?
Yeah, I think we can hear you, Ms. Beard. The answer is that we're still working on your, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, the answer is that no, we have not. We have at this point don't have any power to do decide any cases, and that's what the new ordinance is about. And
Okay, let me ask another question then. A lot of people in this community doesn't even know about this board. And what are y'all doing to make it known to the public? I mean, because we, as the People's Coalition, we did a survey and a lot of people don't even know and they wouldn't even speak about it. So how y'all getting the word out to the public? I don't know how's that working. It's really, seriously, if y'all go to these communities, y'all will see that a lot of people don't even know about it. And if they do, they won't even speak on it. So how's the word getting out to the public? Oh, how do y'all think y'all can solve that problem?
yeah, I think Hansel's got his hand up there.
Hi, Ms. Beard, and I appreciate that sentiment. And part of my role as providing the functional administrative support is to make sure that the board can be more visible in the community. I do agree that a lot of community members may not know about civilian oversight in general, but particularly in this community, I have been meeting with different community members, and I'm trying to put forth a very robust plan of outreach. I had the opportunity to meet with the superintendent of schools to try to create a relationship with the schools so the board has access and the ability to be able to interface with the children and families. So these are things, matters that we are considering. And I do think as a general sentiment, I think that being in this field for a few years, I think that the civilian oversight can do better in public outreach. So I hear your concern, and I want to make sure that I'm doing my role to make sure that the board is more visible and working with the board to improve its visibility in the community.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you so much.
Mr. Trail, are there any additional hands?
Not at the moment.
Okay. Mr. Mendez?
Just very quickly, I guess, before we wind down, and that is, I know these documents that we posted are kind of complicated and hard to read. If you think that we have been co-opted, and if we think that you have given away your rights, and if you think we're not working hard for good policing, please look there. If you find anything that you think is compromised your rights and your safety, let us know. Thanks.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Is there a second? Ms. Robinson, could you pull the board?
Member Brown,
Yes.
Member Frazier,
Yes.
Member Gilmore. Not sure if she's still on. Yes, Member Gilmore,
Yes.
Member Mendez,
Yes.
and Member Watson.
That's how his lips move.
You're on mute.
Yes. Yes.
Very well. Thank you all, and have a good night.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving.